Well, I've had quite a few people ask me about how I was doing bonding. So I thought I'd go ahead and make a video just to kind of go over the gist and what's required and maybe who would or would not want to do this. For starters, what's required is you need a server or machine, something in a data center, or not necessarily a data center, but anywhere that has a connection, an internet connection that is faster than the combined total of the connections you wish to bond. In my case, I was bonding 235 megabit connections, so that means I needed something that was 70 down, 70 up, or better. I would say in general, if you're going over 70 megabits or so, you probably want to have a machine that's on gigabit, because just when it gets close to saturation, you'll have some latency and other stuff. So anyway, basically the distribution I'm using to do this is zeroshell. You can do this with any Linux system. You don't really need to use zeroshell, but zeroshell generally supports setting this up and like setting up the VPN and all that with a GUI, which usually makes it a little easier for people. So I generally would suggest zeroshell to use to do this. It's zeroshell.net is the website, and here's a picture of the web interfaces. Now basically what you're doing with the bonding is you're routing internet traffic over VPN connections to a machine in a data center on a fast connection, a fat pipe. If you don't have access to a machine like that, then you can't do it, and generally most people won't. So I'd say there's probably not a whole lot of people that would actually do this, but I happen to get free colo, and we actually happen to use the zeroshell box for a couple other things at work, so it was pretty easy for me to do myself. Anyway, I guess I can get started here. Basically, I would suggest, it's not required, but having 2 IP addresses on the server that's at the data center. And this has kind of got a little bit of a complex setup here because it's doing more than just my bonding. But see, I've got multiple IP addresses on the machine. Basically, the reason why I would suggest doing multiple IP addresses is simply so you can set up static routes to ensure that when your VPN connections are connecting to the server, it will go through the correct connection. You can set up net balancing rules that should do the same thing, but I found static routes simply work better and is simpler. So most people that have machines in a data center are going to have a lot of IP addresses, at least 5, I'd say, for most people. So simply having an extra IP address shouldn't be a big deal. Anyway, basically the way you started out here is I'm hoping this will be relatively easy to see because it's got a 1080p camcorder here. What you want to do is, I guess first you want to set up your connections and everything in it. I think that's pretty straightforward, so I'm not going to go into too many details here. Here's my machine. It's got 4 NICs, so I've got my 2 FiOS connections here set to DHCP, my LAN interface, and I have an unused interface. I'm kind of running a custom install of zeroshell here simply because I wanted to use it for some other stuff, so it's like I'm actually accessing it on a subdirectory instead of the web server does more than just the admin interface for zeroshell. Let's see here. Once you get the connections set up, you'll probably want to set up the multi-WAN, which is basically set up the multiple gateways, which is pretty straightforward to do because you want to get them first just doing load balancing. I mean, it's just a matter of adding a new gateway, and with DHCP you just select the interface and you can call it whatever you want and you add it. So originally you only have 2, like I've got FiOS 1 and FiOS 2. That'll be all you'll have in the beginning. You'll set up the other ones later. Next, what you want to do is set up the actual VPN connections, and you have to do it on both ends. So first, I'd say probably go on the server side here. Let me zoom in a bit here. So what you want is a LAN-to-LAN VPN connection, and you'll want to make a new VPN. And let me move this over here. Again, this is another reason why using a route is simple, but you don't really have to worry about the port too much. Generally use UDP. I'm on the server side, so I'm going to make it the role of server. The easiest way to do the authentication is the pre-shared key, in my opinion. Encryption, it adds latency. I generally don't need it, but you can definitely add it if you want. I'm going to generate a shared key here. So I'm going to copy and paste that, and copy it, and then put it in the pre-shared key column here, and just call it, I'll do something simple here, just call it 50, virtual private network 50, and then I'm going to do a 51. So I'll go ahead and create that, and it'll start it up for me. And I want to create another one since I've got two connections that I'm bonding. And you don't have to, but I would suggest just using the same pre-shared key for all of them, because then it's usually a little easier to do. So again, UDP server. I think it'll automatically do one more port. The other one was port 1201, so now it's 1202, yep. And I'll make this 51. Oops. And go ahead and save. Okay, now on my machine that's at my house, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I've already got VPN connections connected up here, but I'm going to go ahead and create some new ones. And actually, even before this, I guess I should have went into this, but if you go to the router and you can set up static routes here, you'll see I have a bunch of them set up for various things. The important ones for me I do by host. The very first two on this list, if you see, it's basically set up to go out of my two different interfaces, and it's these two IPs, this 138.91 and 92. So those are set up to go out of my multiple connections here. One IP goes through one connection, the other IP goes through the other connection. So you'll probably want to set that up first, and it's pretty simple to do. It's just a matter, you'd say host because it's a 32. I mean, you could also just put in 255, 255, 255, 255, and you'd want to put in one of the IP addresses and then choose interface if you're using DHCP. If you're using non-DHCP, you need to say gateway and put the gateway IP address. So I'd say like ETH1, say add, and then I do it again, do the other IP, and this time do ETH2 and add again, which I basically have already done. So that'll ensure that when connecting to the VPN, they are using different connections and they are using the correct connection I want them to use. I've had problems with some of the net balancer things. It likes to sometimes just randomly switch, and using a static route seemed to be the most reliable method. Anyway, come back to doing the VPN client here. So I will go ahead and put in one of those IP addresses. I guess I should also keep